great friend of the program. We go out to the Boss Firearms Hotline. Mike, thank you for joining us, man, on a Friday morning. How is it in your neck of the woods? It is muggy. It's a good week for a bye week in College Station. It's muggy. It's rainy. Football would be no good today or this weekend in Bryan College Station. How is it in your world?
Oh, it's pretty awesome, to be quite honest with you. But I always laugh when I do these because I feel like I work harder than David and Billy. I mean, where are these guys at?
Well, I think Billy's on his way in, so you can address that with him. David is actually doing something that is so out of character for him that we had Aaron Torres from Fox Sports on yesterday, and he was asking the same thing. And I said, just let David tell you about it because you'll get a big kick out of it. If you know David at all and know what he's doing, he posted some stuff on Instagram. So you want to find him on Instagram, go look at what he's doing. You're going to get a little bit of a chuckle. He's not out eating pizza or anything like that, you know?
Okay.
Hey, how's cousin Shane had a 1 week, A&M only held him to that walking for 1 week. How's he doing with it?
Yeah, he was the happiest man in the country that Texas A&M lost, unfortunately. He's been betting against them every week, and they finally came and got him. Yeah. So, he didn't have to do his 10,000 steps anymore, but and now he's actually on his way. He tried to rope me into this too, but he's on his way to Oklahoma, Missouri. And,
wow.
Yeah, in the preseason, that, believe it or not, that was a game circled on our calendar, but thanks to what A&M did to Missouri and thanks to what virtually everybody in the SEC has done to Oklahoma short of Auburn, that's no longer really a marquee game that I really wanted to attend. You know what?
Yeah, you've been doing this a long time. And A&M loses on the road at South Carolina. I said going into their 2-game stretch against LSU and South Carolina, if you wanted to keep your season alive, you just probably needed to split, right? So where are you at on A&M after that road loss into a bye week? What is your viewpoint of the Aggies?
Yeah, nothing's really changed for me. I know that final score is a little lopsided, but it's a little deceiving the way the game played out. And just, I really think South Carolina, because of that third loss, they're probably not going to ever really get too close to making the playoff. But if they had just the 2 losses, I think they would make the playoff. And I've been making the case that last year the committee proved with Florida State that they look into injuries. And if you're missing someone, they use as an excuse not to include Florida State. Well, I think it's only right to look at them and say, what are we going to sit here and say, okay, what about like South Carolina that lost without Lenoris Sellers against LSU? I'm not saying you completely excuse that loss, but if we're going to use an injury to not put a team in, I think we could use an injury to say, well, they probably would have beat a team. They were up by 17 points in the first half to maybe even put South Carolina in the playoff field. If they keep doing what they did to A&M and they do that the last month of the season, I don't know how you leave them out of a 12-team playoff. I really don't.
What's up, Mike? It's Luch. So by your logic, I'm going to say we can do the same thing with Le'Veon Moss. But I'm kidding. That was but a devastating injury for the Aggies. If they do overcome, I want to talk about A&M scenario. And I agree. I disagree when I don't think South Carolina's, I don't think they have a chance. I get your logic, and they do it a lot in March Madness. They implement that line of thinking, right? And that's kind of, they use that to justify seeding sometimes. Well, they played 8 games without all first team all SEC point guard or something. So I get what you're saying. I just don't think they're going to do it. And I also agree with South Carolina. And we talked about it last week, you and I. We've talked about it on this site the whole time. That team was really good. And they should have beaten LSU. I don't care what anybody says. I watched that game. They should have beaten them, even without Sellers, with that pick 6. Could have beaten Bama. But my thing is this. In the case of A&M, here's where it gets really interesting. Now the Aggies are in this place where they have to beat Texas, or it doesn't matter. But if they do, what are your thoughts on a Texas A&M team, say, playing Georgia or Tennessee, whoever comes out of that with, let's say one of them has 1 loss? a close loss to one of those two teams in the SEC title game. How do you see that playing out for A&M when you start breaking down the playoff? And what are your thoughts on you got that stance? What are your thoughts on the stance of a 10-3 A&M that loses to, say, like a number 2 Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be pretty wild, Billy, and I think A&M can certainly still get there. And again, just because they've lost one game, I don't think that should. Well, technically 2, but 1 in the conference should eliminate them from anything. I mean, all these teams. I don't even think there's a clear number 1, and I think that has been proven with. I have Georgia number 1. I still have A&M. I think I dropped them number 3 after that one. But, I got Texas, too, I think. I'm splitting hairs here.
Yeah,
Georgia killed Texas. Kentucky nearly knocked off Georgia. This is just a wild, wild season, and results like last week are going to happen. So if A&M were to finish the deal and beat Texas, then, they're going to make the SEC championship, and I think they could beat whoever they're facing. So I don't even know why you're looking ahead to say, well, what if they lose? Yeah, they could win all of them. But to your point, that I think that is going to be the sketchiest thing, Billy, is what happens to potentially a 2-loss team, and A&M would fit that bill because one of the losses was out of conference. A 2-loss team in an SEC championship, if you're ranked 8th or lower in that conference championship game and you lose, there's a really good shot that the playoff committee is going to drop you out of the 12.
But could you imagine Greg Sankey would be on a pillar?
They might have to cancel the championship game.
Like what? So if A&M's going to be docked for playing in the championship game, and maybe Tennessee or Ole Miss or whoever is not, then why would A&M? What's the point of going to Atlanta?
Yeah, that's the big fear.
You're going to tell the SEC that their second best team's not going to get in the playoff, Mike?
They're going to say it's not necessarily if they wanted to,
because
they could make the case that it's not necessarily the second best team because it wasn't a balanced schedule. Which,
right?
I don't think
it'll
they would.
Be even worse if that scenario happens and they had just beaten Texas.
Yeah.
And they put Texas in.
Okay, so
and then you're sitting here saying, well, why in the heck are we playing these conference championships? Well, because there's a significant amount of money on the line. But yeah, that's going to happen eventually, and someone is going to get really upset about it, and it's going to call into question why we're still doing these SEC championships.
So here's my next question for you, because I actually don't think that would happen. I think the committee would have enough common sense to say, okay, like I'd be more worried about if A&M played LSU in the championship, got beat, they put Georgia in, and then maybe a 10-2 Ole Miss or Tennessee. I don't think they'd plop a Texas team in that just a week earlier the Aggies beat. Here's my question about Texas or anyone else. If there's going to be a 2-loss, because I was told before the season there's no way a 2-loss SEC team won't get in, and I said that I can see a way. It would be if there's like 5 1 or 2-loss teams in the conference, somebody's not getting in. My question for you, Mike, could you see a 2-loss SEC team not getting in? And if so, why is it Texas? Well, I mean, look at if Texas loses to A&M. Tell me their resume.
Billy, they beat Michigan.
Right.
They go 6-6. Come on, they're beating them. No, I am 100% with you. But where their ranking is now, it's hard to see Texas falling that far. But unless A&M really whips them good, maybe that'll cause a tumbling in the rankings. But where Texas is now,
yeah.
Unless they struggle week in and week out leading up to that A&M game, but
drop a couple spots,
winning.
yeah.
But the one team you forgot to mention, and A&M did a good job of eliminating this team, is Missouri.
True.
They're still on the table to be 10-2. They're ranked 24 in the debut playoff poll. They have no shot because they got dog whipped twice. So, and I don't think they're gonna. I think they're gonna lose to Oklahoma this weekend. But if they go 10-2, they're already done. So that's one team that could happen to. But yeah, I mean, I sure would get a kick out of Texas being left out of the playoff after all this talk. And I'm not sold that they can win out leading up to A&M. I'm really not.
You better keep an eye on, if you're an SEC fan, of these schools that are kind of jumbled up, those 2-loss teams that you mentioned, you better keep an eye on the Big 12. And you need BYU to win the Big 12 because what happens if an undefeated BYU goes to conference championship weekend and they lose to Colorado or Iowa State? That's a bid-stealing league if that happens.
I haven't checked BYU's schedule. Do they have even a threat of a loss on the rest of the way?
It's the Big 12, so, I mean.
They're all threats. I mean, BYU.
Utah, Kansas, Arizona State, Houston. They're going to be favored in every one of those.
They're going to win every one of those. They'll win. I'd be shocked if they lost one of those.
It's just interesting. All right, Mike, where is your intrigue lie this week? Is it in Baton Rouge or is it in Oxford?
Well, yeah, both really. But for me, Oxford, because I'm picking Ole Miss to win.
Woo!
And
I'm with him.
If it happens, big if, I'll never call him Lane whiffing again. If he loses, I don't think I'll ever call him anything other than that because this is not 1 year built to this. This is multiple years. They've been building for this moment, getting Georgia on their campus. I think that was part of the reason Lane Kiffin was so upset. They didn't get the night game. They want every possible advantage going into this Georgia game. But here's the deal. I think my selection is more about Georgia. And yes, they looked like the team to beat for a quarter or, about maybe a half against Alabama. They look like the team to beat against Texas. But other than that, they have not looked like the team to beat. So this is not the two-time national champion Georgia. This is not even last year Georgia, which probably should have won it all too. This is a different Georgia. And that doesn't mean they can't win it all, but they can't run the football. It's a huge issue. They don't have weapons, seemingly. Carson Beck we all know all the issues. He leads the SEC in interceptions. If you were to tell me Carson Beck's not going to throw an interception the rest of the year, I'd pick Georgia to win it all. But I don't know how you could say that given what we've seen so far. So I don't know. I really think Ole Miss, especially on the defensive side of the ball, people are not grasping how good they are there. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, and I like Jackson Dart in this moment, Lane Kiffin to finally show up. I like Ole Miss to knock off Georgia.
I'm with you, Mike. And I hate picking against Georgia because the last time I did, they put the most holy ass whipping on Texas.
And Kirby's better than anybody at getting his team to believe they're being doubted, like slighted.
They don't have. It won't take much this week.
Right.
People are going to call this a dogfight, but I think this game's going to look a lot like that. Their Ole Miss has lost to Kentucky, so they have shown they can lose that type of game. But I do think Dart is. He's looking better. I guess a lot of that will depend to me on Trey Harris. I guess he's listed as doubtful this week.
Mike, what do you make of this Ole Miss injury list? Is that legit or is that Lane trolling Greg Sankey?
Yeah, no, that's Lane being Lane, knowing that they're going to fake injuries. And on Sunday, when he gets a phone call from Sankey, he could say, look, we got 30 guys injured heading into the game. Yeah, this guy went down, that guy went down. They're all on the list. You know, that's all that is.
I don't know how they put up with it.
Yeah, a guy that scored 5 touchdowns last week he was doubtful on Wednesday's report. I mean it's a joke. So you can't take anything at face value on that injury report. I think Trey Harris is going to suit up in this game too.
Yeah, I like Ole Miss to finally break through, and I'm reluctant to say that. What about Baton Rouge?
Man, this is a coin toss type game because I want to know if LSU, if they got exposed by A&M, perhaps. I mean, there for a minute, I was ready to crown Brian Kelly. I was ready to crown the LSU Tigers. I thought they were going to win by a decided margin there in Kyle Field. But, of course, it went completely the other way, and now I'm starting to question how good LSU is. But in second half against Ole Miss, in second half against Arkansas, I mean, they were pitching shutouts. I don't think LSU is like dynamic on defense by any means, but they were certainly trending in the right direction. And for a half, they were trending that way against A&M. So I think that those are issues that can get cleaned up defending the running quarterback in 2 weeks. You know what I don't think can get cleaned up in 2 weeks? Alabama's secondary.
Right.
They're a train wreck. And I like LSU's advantage with Garrett Nussmeier and those receivers. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game, but I lean LSU in this one. And what a world we may be living in here where on November 9th, Alabama's eliminated from the playoff discussion. Is Caleb DeBoer, if he thinks his seat is warming up today, wait till Sunday.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm with you on that. What
LSU
about
can't
you?
run the football.
Can Bama?
They've got good backs. Like, I think Caden Durham's a good back, but I trust Jalen Milroe's dual threat ability. If you look where LSU has struggled, Mike, now they did a good job against Taylon Green, but Taylon Green was banged up, and there was no really a healthy Jaquindon Jackson. When they're facing offenses that have their two guys in the backfield that are a running back and a quarterback, a mobile quarterback and a good running back, they've really struggled.
What, twice?
I think Bama's got that. I think Jalen Milroe could run for 90 yards and throw for 130, and Bama wins.
Do you have any idea, though, what Jalen Milroe has been running for here lately? I just got it pulled up.
It's 48 yards a game, something like that.
Right. So Mizzou 50, Tennessee 11, South Carolina 36, Vanderbilt 10. I mean, he is not.
Because I don't think Bama has a running game
guy that he has displayed. He's not been that this year.
I don't envision Garrett Nussmeier. I know Bama's secondary's got issues. They're without Garrett Dellinger at left guard. And if Nussmeier gets shaken, he will throw the ball to the other team.
I think so will Jalen Milroe. Or Jalen Milroe will throw 48 or 50% completion. I just think Bama hasn't run. Like, they don't have I know they've got decent backs. They don't have Le'Veon Moss. They don't have Rocket Sanders. Those two guys, what they do with that's why, to me, Sellers and Reed killed them so much, because it was the combination of both.
Yeah.
You give them 2 weeks to prepare. And that was the big thing with LSU, Mike, is they were saying, and so their little theory, their little talking point after they lost to A&M is going to get put to the test this week. And like you said, because all we heard was we didn't prepare for Marcel Reed. Their players said it. Their coach said it. Their media damn sure said it. I've never heard more crying out of Baton Rouge since I don't know when, since they took Mike the Tiger off the field. But
he's back this weekend.
Yeah, those guys did more crying in the SEC media. I know you heard them out of Baton Rouge. Oh, well, that's a damning indictment on your coach. I don't care the reasons why you couldn't stop it. Well, now you have 2 weeks to prepare for Jalen Milroe. I promise you they're playing Milroe. It's not Lane Kiffin. He's not listed as doubtful on the injury report. So now LSU's going to have to prove it. And you know what? I actually think they will.
Okay. Last question for both of you. We'll let you get out of here, Mike. We're up against a break. Who's the best football player right now in the SEC? And Billy, I'll get your take on it too.
Ooh, best football player in the SEC. I mean, it's going to sound crazy. Your listeners have jumped on me for my hot Vanderbilt
he's
takes.
right.
But I must stay there, man. Diego Pavia. Is he going to be first pick in the NFL draft? Certainly not. But we're just talking the game of college football. One guy, one game. I mean, how can you be anything but just over the moon on Diego Pavia and what he's brought? He's changed the culture at Vanderbilt.
I don't know if I disagree. Just with what he's done. If it's
going to be Diego, I'm not arguing Diego Pavia, by the way.
Sounds like you're about to.
No, but I'm saying if that's, then Le'Veon Moss was in the discussion.
I think Le'Veon. Well, I think he would have been a top 5.
Yeah.
Before, like, quietly too, and I don't think many people would have put him in their top 5.
That's why I asked.
Yeah, but before that injury, I think he's the MVP of a, let's say, when he got in, he's an MVP of an SEC title contender without. I don't think there's a question about that, and we could talk for 20 minutes, Mike, on what that injury means to A&M and how they recover from it. Fortunately, they only have to recover for 2 SEC games, because I think over the long haul, you just don't navigate that. But yeah, I think he was trending to be a top 5. I think he was, in my opinion, he was the best running back. He or the guy at Tennessee were the two best in the SEC, and he was trending that way statistically too. So big loss for the Aggies.
Kyle Kennard might be defensive MVP of the league.
He's really good, but I'm still going to go with Pavia. I mean, what he's done at Vanderbilt, right, Mike? Like, it's like they beat Bama so long ago. Like, just Vandy going into Auburn and winning at Jordan-Hare. Like, if you took that Bama upset out and said, They beat Auburn on the road. They went and beat, they beat Kentucky. Like, Vandy even doing that. Okay, but by the way, we're going to throw in Auburn, and by the way, they had Texas down to an onside kick. And right, Mike, they're not done yet.
No, I mean, it's going to sound crazy. They can make the college football playoff. They legitimately could if they now they have to win out. South Carolina, LSU, Tennessee. How would you deny them if they're winning all those games? You know
I bet they win one of those three. I
agree.
Mike, I think they can beat Tennessee.
I do too.
Yep. Mike, really appreciate your time, dude.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys.